The palace lights were dying one section at a time when the wounded human soldier made the choice nobody expected. His armor was already failing. His breathing was measured by a system running out of power. Around him, an alien queen faced the collapse of everything she had sworn to protect. One decision would expose a hidden truth, destroy old certainties, and leave both of them paying a price. Welcome to Gravity and Stardust now. Let's begin the story of the soldier who became the one witness a galaxy tried to silence. The first warning was not the explosion. It was the silence before it. Daniel Reyes saw the diplomatic chamber's emergency network hesitate for 0.8 seconds. Almost nothing. But systems did not hesitate. People did. Machines failed. Or someone told them to wait. His visor captured the anomaly before the floor moved beneath him. Security response delay detected. The message vanished beneath a cascade of new alerts. Pressure loss. Structural damage. Unknown energy discharge. Then the chamber broke. The impact struck like a moving wall. Daniel's armor absorbed the first wave, but the force still threw him across the polished floor. His shoulder slammed into a collapsed support frame. The suit locked the joint before his body could follow. Pain arrived after the system report. Left shoulder actuator, damaged. External plating, compromised. Oxygen seal, stable. The air inside his helmet tasted like burned metal. Fine fragments drifted through the failing gravity field, turning the chamber into a cloud of floating debris. Averan emergency sensors read the scene differently. Their electromagnetic scanners mapped what human eyes could not see. Heat signatures, electrical discharge, biological movement. Hundreds of signals. Most moved away. One moved toward danger. Daniel pushed himself upright. Stay down. The translation system had not recovered. The delegates did not understand. So he moved. A fallen support beam trapped two Averan technicians near the western exit. His tactical display calculated the options. Evacuation route unavailable. Self-extraction probability, 84%. Civilian recovery probability, 31%. Daniel ignored the numbers. The damaged actuator resisted as he lifted the beam. The armor redirected power from mobility systems to maintain the movement. A warning appeared. Motor assist reduced. The beam rose. Slowly, the first technician crawled free. The second looked at Daniel through a cracked emergency visor. Her biometric readings changed. Heart rate increased. Pupil dilation. Fear response. Daniel recognized it. Not because she was Averan. Because fear looked the same when someone was trapped and waiting for help. He lowered the beam enough for her to escape. Only then did he release it. The metal crashed into the floor. The impact traveled through his boots. Another alert appeared. Structural failure cascade possible. Daniel turned toward the exit. The security doors had sealed. Too quickly. He checked the chamber recording. The witness mesh inside his armor had captured everything automatically. Impact. Energy pattern. Security response. The data was incomplete. It did not tell him who attacked. It did not tell him why. It only recorded what happened. That difference mattered. A new message appeared across every surviving display. Attack origin. Human military signature. Daniel looked at the screen, then at the people around him. The conclusion had arrived before the investigation. His radio activated. Static filled the channel. Then a controlled voice. All human personnel remain in place for verification. Daniel knew the difference. Verification searched for answers. Containment waited for a target. He checked his remaining systems. Weapons offline. Medical status declining. No extraction route. He raised both hands. Slowly, the security drones descended from the ceiling. Their scanners passed over his damaged armor. They measured ammunition, heat, biological stress, equipment status. They did not measure intention. They could not. The drones prepared a restraint protocol. Then the chamber doors opened. The guards moved first. The person behind them did not. Queen Caliph Orin entered the ruined diplomatic chamber. Daniel recognized the insignia before the person. Avara's highest authority. A ruler, not a soldier. Her attention moved across the destruction. The civilians. The drones. The damaged witness mesh readings still running on Daniel's visor. She saw the same scene everyone else saw. But she did not accept the first conclusion. Commander. The security officer stepped forward. Your Majesty, the human is the primary suspect. Caliph looked at Daniel's damaged armor. Then at the emergency logs. Then at the delayed security response timestamp hidden beneath the official record. The chamber remained filled with smoke, broken systems, and unanswered questions. She had seconds to decide. A command to fire would end the uncertainty. A command to release him would create a political crisis. Neither choice was safe. Caliph chose a third option. Stand down the drones. The guards froze. The commander stared at her. Your Majesty, stand down. The drones stopped. Not because the evidence was clear. It was not. Not because Daniel was trusted. He was not. Because the first assumption was moving faster than the truth. And Caliph Oren had just decided to slow it down. The order to stand down lasted 12 seconds. That was how long it took for the palace network to recognize that the command came from the Queen herself. 12 seconds. Long enough for every security officer in the chamber to understand what had happened. Long enough for every recording system to preserve it. Caliph knew the consequences before the drones lowered their targeting systems. A public command was not only an instruction. It was a statement. She had interrupted a security procedure during a diplomatic attack and protected the one person the public had already been told to fear. Commander Varric stepped closer. Your Majesty, the evidence is incomplete. Yes. The answer stopped him. Caliph looked across the damaged chamber. I am not declaring his innocence. The commander waited. I am preventing an assumption from becoming a verdict. The distinction mattered. Not everyone accepted it. The surviving delegates were moved from the chamber under emergency protection. Some watched Daniel with suspicion. Others watched Caliph with the same expression. A queen could survive disagreement. She could not survive the appearance that she had abandoned the law. Daniel noticed. You just made yourself part of the investigation. Caliph looked toward the sealed security doors. Yes. That was not the safe choice. No, Daniel studied her. Most leaders explained themselves after making a decision. She did not. That made her harder to understand. The palace medical team arrived under royal authorization. Their equipment unfolded around Daniel's damaged armor, scanning without forcing contact. Averan instruments projected the results. Foreign biology detected. Trauma levels elevated. Energy reserves unstable. The medical officer hesitated. Human physiology compatibility is uncertain. Caliph looked at the display. Can you stabilize him? Yes. Can you repair the damage? The officer paused. No, the answer was simple. The technology had limits. Daniel heard it. Good. He trusted limits more than promises. The treatment process began. Small mechanical interfaces connected to his armor, drawing power from the suit and the medical unit. The system did not rebuild what was broken. It only prevented further decline. His suit redirected energy. Mobility decreased. Survival increased. A trade. Nothing more. While the medical team worked, Caliph reviewed the emergency logs. The official security record was already forming. Attack. Human military signature. Human suspect. The sequence was clean. Too clean. She opened the raw event record. A security analyst appeared beside her. Your Majesty, the data is authenticated. By which layer? The analyst hesitated. Primary Security Authority. Caliph looked at the timestamp. And the secondary review? Pending. She closed the file. A small delay. A small gap. The same kind of gap Daniel had noticed. Not proof. A question. Her private channel activated. Regent Valar Thane appeared. His expression remained controlled. Your Majesty. Regent. The human must be transferred to controlled custody. Caliph looked at Daniel across the chamber. He was awake. Listening. I will not transfer an injured witness before independent verification. Valar's eyes narrowed slightly. Witness. A survivor. That distinction will be debated. Yes. And while it is debated, public pressure will increase. Caliph knew. She also knew the alternative. If she surrendered Daniel immediately and the record proved false later, the damage would be irreversible. If she protected him without evidence, she would appear to be hiding a threat. There was no clean option. Only consequences. I will assume responsibility for his temporary containment. Valar became still. Not surprised. Concerned. You understand what that means. Yes. The channel ended. The cost arrived immediately. Royal security permissions around Caliph's private residence were restricted. Not removed. Restricted. A warning appeared on her personal system. Internal review initiated. Daniel saw it. You lost access. Some access. Because of me. Because of my decision. The correction was quiet. It mattered. The medical officer completed the stabilization cycle. Movement is possible. Limited. Daniel sat up slowly. His armor assisted less than before. Every motion carried the weight of damage. Caliph looked toward the private residence access route. There were cameras in the main corridors. Security teams were already searching. The public investigation had begun. She needed a location where official procedures could not be rushed by political pressure. A place where every system answered only to her. Daniel noticed where she was looking. No, Caliph looked at him. No. You have a bad habit of choosing complicated solutions. And you have a habit of refusing help before understanding it. A pause. Daniel almost smiled. Almost. The hidden access door beneath the damaged chamber opened. Ancient mechanisms moved behind newer security layers. Caliph entered the authorization sequence. Daniel watched. Where does that lead? My private residence. He looked at her. You are hiding me. Yes. The honesty surprised him more than the decision. Why? Caliph looked at the sealed corridor behind them. Because until the evidence is verified, every side has a reason to control what happens next. The passage opened. The palace searched for a human soldier who had become a political threat. The queen moved that threat into the one place where the palace itself could not question her authority. And with that choice, Caliph crossed the line between investigating the crisis and becoming part of it. The private residence had no resemblance to the diplomatic chamber. That was deliberate. The chamber had been built to impress visitors. This place had been built to survive them. Caliph's personal quarters were surrounded by older systems, many independent from the modern palace network. The walls carried fewer displays. The doors relied less on automated authority checks. The room felt less like a symbol of power, more like a place where decisions were made without witnesses. Daniel noticed that immediately. Your safest room is the one with the least technology. Caliph removed her outer ceremonial layer and placed it beside the medical station. Older systems have fewer connections, fewer ways to be controlled. Yes. The answer came without defense. That was becoming a pattern. Daniel did not know whether he trusted it. He knew he had started paying attention to it. The medical system began a deeper evaluation. Unlike the emergency treatment in the chamber, this process required cooperation. The equipment scanned his injuries, mapped damaged tissue, and compared his biology against Avaran medical protocols. The results appeared. Compatibility, limited. Trauma stabilization, possible. Full restoration, unavailable. Daniel looked at the final line. Honest machine. Dr. Lyra Voss entered through the private access route. She glanced at the display. It is a medical system. Still honest. Lyra adjusted the treatment parameters. The machine reduced stress on his damaged shoulder and redirected support functions. It could slow deterioration. It could not undo what had happened. Caliph watched the process. How long? Until he can move safely? Lyra asked. Yes. That depends on what you consider safe. Daniel looked at the doctor. Everyone here likes complicated answers. Because simple answers are usually inaccurate. The response was precise. Very Avaran. While the treatment continued, Caliph opened the raw witness mesh archive. Daniel noticed immediately. You're accessing it yourself? Yes. Without an analyst? I need to understand what we have before deciding who sees it. Daniel studied the interface. You don't trust your own system. I trust systems within their limits. That answer caught his attention. The archive reconstructed the attack, not as a recording, as measurements, pressure changes, energy release, security commands. The room filled with layered data. Daniel watched the sequence. Caliph watched him. You noticed something before I did. The security response. She expanded the timeline. The first official reaction appeared. Then the raw sensor record. A small difference. The response was valid. The authorization was valid. The command chain was valid. Everything passed. Daniel leaned closer. That's worse. Why? Because if someone forged the attack record, we look for the forgery. He pointed toward the security sequence. But if someone controlled the process around the data, everything still looks correct. Lyra moved through the archive. The witness mesh confirms the integrity of the recording. Daniel looked at her. Meaning? The sensors recorded what they detected. The timestamps align. The data structure is intact. And the conclusion? Lyra paused. Not provided by the system. The distinction changed the room. The technology had done its job. It had never been designed to answer the question they needed most. Who controlled the meaning assigned to the facts? Caliph reviewed the archive again. Can we verify the context independently? Yes. How long? Longer than we have. A security notice appeared. Not an alarm. A request. Internal review access expanded. Caliph read the message. Someone inside the palace was increasing oversight. Daniel noticed her expression. Someone is watching. Yes. Someone you know? Someone with authority. That answer told him enough. The treatment system completed its first cycle. Daniel moved his injured arm. The response was slower. The armor could support him. It could not restore him. Another trade. Another limit. Caliph closed the archive. We need a controlled verification process. Daniel looked at her. And who controls it? She did not answer immediately, because both of them already knew. That was the problem. If the system was compromised by interpretation rather than data, then every official channel carried risk. The door behind them remained sealed. The palace continued searching. Inside the room, a human soldier and an alien queen examined the same evidence from different worlds. Neither had enough trust to surrender control, but both had enough reason to keep looking. The council did not ask Caliph where the human was. That was more dangerous. They already had theories. The virtual chamber opened across the private residence wall, replacing the quiet of the old room with the voices of officials who had spent the last hour deciding what the crisis meant. Caliph stood alone before them. Daniel watched from the medical station. He could hear only her side of the conversation at first. That was intentional. She had not opened the channel for him. Not yet. The first question came from a council representative. Your Majesty, why was the human removed from security custody? Caliph did not answer immediately. The answer mattered. I authorized temporary protection of a wounded survivor while evidence is reviewed. The word survived the chamber. Survivor. Not suspect. Not soldier. Not enemy. A careful choice. The council reacted. Some representatives exchanged private signals. Others requested immediate clarification. The debate had already moved beyond Daniel. It was about authority. About whether the queen had the right to interrupt a process designed to prevent instability during a crisis. Daniel watched the reactions more than the words. The Averans were not unified. Some feared the human. Some feared the possibility that their own systems had failed. That difference mattered. Caliph ended the session without requesting emergency authority. Daniel noticed. You could have forced the issue. She turned toward him. Yes. But you didn't. No, why? Because a decision made only through power would become another argument about power. Daniel looked away. He understood the logic. He did not know yet whether he trusted the person using it. That distinction remained. Dr. Lyra entered with the first independent analysis. The medical specialist placed a data module on the table. The witness mesh record is consistent. Caliph looked at the information. Consistent with what? With itself. Daniel looked at Lyra. That answer is becoming a problem. It is becoming a clearer answer. She expanded the analysis. The recording has not been altered. The timestamps align. The sensor outputs match expected physical events. Caliph studied the sequence. Then why can't we prove what happened? Lyra separated the layers. The system verifies the record. It does not verify the meaning assigned to the record. The same limitation appeared again. The same boundary. Daniel moved closer. So whoever did this did not need to fake the event. No, Lyra said. They needed people to interpret it incorrectly. Caliph looked at the security response chain. Every action had authorization. Every command had a valid source. Every person involved could claim they followed procedure. That was the part she found most concerning. A broken system was easy to identify. A functioning system used for the wrong purpose was harder. A new message interrupted the analysis. Royal Security Review status updated. Valor had requested expanded authority over the investigation. Daniel read the notice. He's moving. Caliph nodded. He should. Daniel looked at her. You expected that? I expected someone to. The answer was practical, not comforting. The difference remained. Caliph opened a limited channel to Valor. Regent, Your Majesty, you requested control over evidence review. I requested consistency. You requested access before independent verification. Because delay benefits whoever created this situation. Caliph paused. He was not entirely wrong. That was the problem. The crisis did not divide people into those who cared and those who did not. It divided them by what risk they feared most. Valor feared collapse. Caliph feared a false certainty. Daniel watched the exchange. For the first time, he saw why this conflict had existed before he arrived. No one believed they were protecting something harmful. That made the situation harder. The channel closed. The palace systems continued processing requests around them. More restrictions appeared. More oversight. Less freedom. Caliph looked at the remaining data. We need an independent route. Daniel looked at the archive. And if the route is compromised? Then we find out. That is not a plan. No. She looked toward the sealed entrance. It is the only direction left. Outside the private residence, security teams continued their search. Inside, the evidence remained incomplete. The machine had confirmed the record. The politics had already begun changing its meaning. And both of them were running out of time before someone else decided what the truth was supposed to be. The independent verification chamber had one advantage. Nobody trusted it completely. That was why Caliph chose it. The chamber sat beneath the Western archives, disconnected from most modern palace systems. It had limited processing capacity, outdated interfaces, and fewer automated functions. A weakness. A useful one. Daniel stood beside the analysis console while Dr. Lyra transferred the witness mesh archive through a physical connection. The damaged armor required manual synchronization. Every transfer took longer. Every delay increased risk. The medical monitor attached to Daniel's suit continued tracking his condition. Stability, declining. Mobility assistance, reduced. Power reserve, limited. He ignored the display. Caliph noticed. She said nothing. Instead, she watched the data reconstruction. The archive unfolded layer by layer. Energy release. Pressure changes. Security commands. The same sequence they had already examined. Except now they were comparing it against independent records. Lyra opened the first comparison. Physical event matches. The second, sensor timing matches. The third, security response matches authorized procedures. Daniel looked at the final line. That should be good news. It is, Lyra said. But she changed the display. The answer appeared. The attack record was valid. The emergency response was valid. The authorization chain was valid. Nothing was broken. Daniel stared at the information. That's the problem. Caliph looked at him. Explain. He pointed to the timeline. If someone changed the data, we would search for the change. He moved to the next layer. But if someone controlled the process around the data, everything still looks correct. Lyra expanded the authority chain. The security commands had not been forged. They had been issued by legitimate systems. The witness mesh had not failed. It had recorded reality. It simply could not determine why reality had been arranged that way. Caliph remained focused on the screen. Who approved the response classification? Lyra checked. The emergency authority system. Who controls that? The doctor hesitated. Multiple departments. Daniel looked at the list. Security. Diplomatic protection. Crisis management. Different groups. Same conclusion. A system designed to prevent confusion had created a path where confusion could be manufactured. The discovery changed the investigation. They were no longer searching for a false record. They were searching for who had guided the interpretation. A new alert appeared. Royal Investigation Channel locked. Caliph read it. The council had accepted Vaylor's request for expanded review authority. Daniel looked at her. How much access did he get? Enough. That means the official investigation now has more control than we do. The private resident's security status changed. Additional monitoring. Restricted movement. Reduced communication privileges. The palace was not attacking them. It was doing something harder to fight. It was following procedure. Daniel looked at the new restrictions. So now what? Caliph closed the archive. The original plan had been built around proof. Proof would expose the manipulation. Proof would force recognition. That plan was gone. We stopped trying to convince the system to understand the evidence. Daniel looked at her. And do what? Move the evidence somewhere the system does not control. Dr. Lyra opened the neutral relay access map. There were no easy routes. The official channels were monitored. The military channels were politically compromised. The remaining option was a limited relay outside direct-to-Varan authority. Daniel studied the route. It is unstable. Yes. Low bandwidth. Yes. Could fail. Yes. He looked at Caliph. You were waiting for this option? No. The answer came immediately. I was hoping we would not need it. That mattered. She had not planned everything. She was adapting. Daniel returned his attention to the map. The relay required leaving the protected section of the palace, leaving min exposure, staying mint slow containment. The choice was no longer between safety and danger. It was between two different risks. A new transmission request appeared. Internal security team approaching archive level. Lyra checked the corridor access. They know we are here. Caliph disconnected the archive. The evidence vanished from the display. Not destroyed. Moved. A copy remained inside Daniel's witness mesh. Another remained with Lyra. Redundancy. A simple survival principle. Daniel noticed. You plan for failure. Caliph looked at the sealed door. No, she picked up the data module. I planned for the possibility. The archive level lights changed. The palace was beginning another search. This time, they were not hiding a suspected attacker. They were carrying evidence that the system itself could not interpret. The machine had confirmed the record. Now the people had to act before someone else decided what that record meant. The archive level was the first place in the palace to lose priority. Caliph noticed because she had spent years learning what the building protected first. Not the throne, not the symbols, the systems that kept people alive. The corridor lights had shifted to emergency efficiency. Sections of the old archive wing were isolated from the central network. Doors no longer opened automatically. Every movement required authorization checks that took longer each time. The palace was protecting itself by becoming less useful. Daniel walked beside her with the medical support frame attached beneath his damaged armor. The device reduced strain on his injuries. It also slowed him. A compromise. Nothing more. You are moving slower, Caliph said. Daniel looked at the floor map. So is your palace. The answer was not a complaint, just an observation. Dr. Lyra followed behind them, protecting the archive copies. 2 copies. 2 locations. No central storage. A lesson learned from the failure of the system they had trusted. They reached the service junction below the archive wing. The original route to the neutral relay appeared on the map, then disappeared. A security update replaced it. Access revoked. Lyra checked the source. Royal Security Directorate. Daniel looked at Caliph. Your people? Yes. The honesty came quickly. It no longer surprised him. That was different from trust. A warning appeared across the junction display. Emergency Authority Review active. The palace was not hunting them as criminals. It was restricting them as an unresolved risk. That made the situation harder. Caliph had always believed rules existed to prevent individual power from becoming dangerous. Now those same rules were closing around the only people trying to expose their failure. Her choice had created the situation. She knew that. Daniel saw it. You could still reverse it. Caliph stopped. The words were not an accusation. That made them heavier. Explain. You could announce everything. She looked at the damaged archive module. Without verified context. Would that be worse? Yes. Daniel studied her. Because they would think you were protecting me. No. Caliph looked toward the security barriers. Because they would think I was protecting my own version of events. The distinction remained. That was what she had been avoiding since the beginning. Power could expose a lie. Power could also create one. A new message arrived. Regent Valor Thane requests emergency review. Caliph accepted. Valor appeared through the junction display. His background was not a command center. It was the council chamber. A deliberate choice. He wanted witnesses. Your Majesty. Regent, I have requested temporary control over movement restrictions within the palace. Caliph looked at the security updates. You believe I am obstructing the investigation. I believe the investigation cannot function while evidence, witnesses, and authority remain concentrated in one place. A fair argument. She hated that. What would you do? Valor answered without hesitation. Separate the human witness. Secure the evidence. Allow independent review. Daniel watched him. The proposals sounded reasonable. Because parts of it were. That was why this was not a simple conflict. Valor was not asking for destruction. He was asking for control. Caliph ended the transmission. The cost arrived immediately. A new restriction appeared. Royal private access temporarily suspended. Her residence was no longer fully hers. Daniel noticed the change. You lost another piece. Yes. Because you chose to hide me. Yes. No argument. No defense. Daniel looked away. The answer created a different kind of trust. Not confidence. Recognition. She was not pretending the decision was free. The route to the relay remained blocked. The remaining path required crossing a maintenance sector outside the protected royal zone. A dangerous route. A necessary one. Lyra examined Daniel's medical readings. You should not be walking this distance. Daniel checked the route. How far? Approximately 1 mile. His expression changed slightly. Can I do it? The doctor did not answer immediately. That was the answer. Caliph looked at the map, then at the security updates, then at the remaining time before the next review team reached the junction. The choice was not between a safe option and a dangerous one. There was no safe option. She opened the maintenance access. The old mechanism resisted before moving. Beyond it waited a section of the palace rarely seen by anyone outside engineering staff. The temperature control system had already reduced output, not failing, saving power. The air carried the dryness of a structure operating below its intended capacity. They entered. Behind them, the archive wing sealed. The place where Caliph had protected Daniel was gone. Ahead, the route to the relay remained uncertain. The decision that began as an act of protection had become something larger, a test of whether she could accept the consequences of her own choice. The maintenance sector had been built for machines, not for people. That was why it remained open. Most of the palace had moved towards centralized control. This section had resisted modernization because replacing the old infrastructure would have required shutting down systems the royal complex depended on. Now that decision kept them moving. Barely. The corridor narrowed ahead. Exposed conduits ran along the walls, carrying power between isolated sections of the palace. The systems were still functioning, but every adjustment left evidence. A cooling unit reduced output. A backup processor entered low power mode. A security sensor stopped scanning one area to maintain another. The palace was choosing what it could afford to lose. Daniel walked slower than before. His armor assisted each step, but the support system had become less responsive after the earlier damage. The medical frame beneath the suit compensated for some movement. Not all. Caliph noticed. She did not tell him to stop. She knew he would not. Instead, she adjusted their route. 30 yards ahead. There is a service platform. Daniel checked the map. Your shortest path? No, he looked at her. Why? The shortest path crosses an active security intersection. The answer mattered. She was no longer trying to reach the destination fastest. She was trying to keep everyone alive long enough to reach it. Dr. Lyra followed behind them, protecting the archive copies. 2 copies. 2 locations. No central storage. A lesson taken from the failure of the system they had trusted. They reached the service platform. The relay connection appeared, then failed. Lyra checked the interface. The palace isolated the external communication layer. Daniel looked at the screen. Can we reopen it? Caliph answered before Lyra could. Yes. Daniel turned. How? She looked at the authorization panel. Royal emergency access. That sounds like a problem. It is. The panel required her authority. Using it would create a record. A permanent one. Vaylor's investigation would show exactly when she bypassed the restriction. Caliph placed her hand on the interface. The system requested confirmation. Royal authority override. She paused. Daniel saw it. This is the part where your position becomes the problem. Yes. The confirmation remained. For years, Caliph had believed restraint was the difference between leadership and impulse. She had avoided using power because she feared becoming another person who believed the system existed for her. But avoiding action had created another failure. The delay had allowed others to define the situation. She confirmed. The relay channel reopened. Immediately, another alert appeared. Override logged. No surprise. No escape. The cost had already been recorded. Lyra connected the archive. The transfer began, then stopped. Signal capacity insufficient. Daniel checked the numbers. The relay could send the data, just not quickly enough. How long? 14 minutes. A security team would reach them sooner. Caliph looked at the power allocation. The relay was drawing from emergency reserves. Those reserves were also supporting critical palace functions. Life support, medical systems, defense coordination. The machine displayed the available options. Increase transmission speed. Reduce another system. No third option. Daniel saw it. The palace cannot support both. No, he looked at the map. The system is making the decision for us. Caliph watched the numbers. That was the mistake she had made from the beginning. She had trusted procedures to prevent the wrong outcome. She had trusted systems to carry responsibility. But systems could only follow the priorities they were given. People decided those priorities. A new alert appeared. Search team arriving. The door behind them remained sealed. For now, Daniel checked his armor status. His remaining reserve power was still limited. Lyra noticed. Do not connect the suit. Daniel looked at her. You already know I was considering it. Yes. And you may not survive the transfer. The statement was medical, not emotional. That made it harder to ignore. Caliph looked at Daniel. Earlier, she would have made the decision for him. She would have protected the injured soldier because that was what power allowed her to do. Now she waited. Daniel noticed. That mattered. He turned back to the relay. The first plan had failed because they expected the evidence itself to force the outcome. The relay continued waiting. The security team moved closer. The archive remained trapped. And the final step required something neither technology nor authority could provide. A choice. The security team reached the outer maintenance corridor before the relay reached 50%. Caliph saw their movement through the old surveillance feed. The cameras were no longer connected to the main palace network. They were slower, less reliable, but they still showed enough. Commander Varek was leading the team. His weapon remained lowered. That was intentional. He was not coming to destroy them. He was coming to restore control. Your Majesty, Varek said through the corridor speaker. Step away from the relay. Caliph looked at the transmission progress. 48%. The numbers continued climbing. Slowly. Too slowly. You know what happens if this stops, she replied. Yes. Varek looked at the relay status through the security feed. You also know what happens if you continue. Caliph did. The emergency reserves were already under strain. The relay required more power. The palace required more time. The two demands could not both be satisfied. The system had reduced non-essential functions automatically. Several sections of the royal complex had already entered low-power mode. Medical reserves were shrinking. Defense coordination had become slower. The machine was doing exactly what it was designed to do. Preserve critical systems. Daniel watched the numbers. Then he looked at his armor diagnostics. His suit still carried reserve power. Enough for movement. Enough for medical stabilization. Enough for one final transfer. Dr. Lyra saw the calculation before he touched anything. Daniel. He stopped. The system will disable emergency support. I know. Your recovery will be affected. I know. She looked at the medical readings. You may not regain full function. Daniel returned his attention to the relay. The warning remained. The choice was visible. Caliph stepped toward him. Your decision does not belong to the mission alone. Daniel looked at her. She continued. I will not order you to spend your life for my failure. The words carried no command. No authority. Only recognition. Daniel looked back at the transmission. The first part of the plan had failed because they expected a system to carry the burden of judgment. Now there was no system left to hide behind. He opened the armor interface. The suit displayed the consequences. Survival support reduction. Thermal regulation loss. Mobility assistance failure possible. He confirmed. The change happened immediately. Power redirected from internal support systems into the relay connection. The lights along his armor dimmed. The medical frame beneath him adjusted its balance. His breathing became heavier as the suit reduced assistance. Avaran sensors registered the shift. Lyra watched the readings fall. His body is compensating. Caliph looked at the display. How long? Unknown. A dangerous answer. An honest one. The relay accelerated. 59%. 68. 74. The security team reached the final door. Varek looked at the transmission numbers. Then at Caliph. He understood what was happening. Stop this. Caliph faced the commander. If I stop, the evidence remains controlled. If you continue, you may lose him. The statement was true. Caliph looked at Daniel. The first time she found him, he had been a wounded soldier inside a destroyed chamber. Now he was still wounded, still vulnerable, still making the same kind of choice. She did not override him. She did not remove the consequence from his hands. The relay continued. 86%. The power regulator began fluctuating. A warning appeared. Transmission stability declining. Lyra moved to the control panel. The relay cannot maintain this load. Daniel checked the remaining suit reserve. Almost empty. There is another option. Caliph looked at him. He pointed to the power routing. My armor can provide the final stabilization. Lyra understood immediately. The suit's remaining systems. The emergency functions. Everything still keeping him alive. After that, she said, the armor will not support you. Daniel nodded. No argument. No hesitation. The corridor door opened partially. Security lights crossed the floor. Varek's team entered the threshold. They saw the queen, the soldier, the failing relay. The decision was already underway. Daniel confirmed the final transfer. His armor shut down one layer at a time. The remaining power moved outward. 89%. 95%. The relay stabilized. The final data packets moved through the neutral channel. Battle records. Authentication chains. Command histories. The information left Avara. Beyond one palace. Beyond one government. The regulator reached its limit. The relay completed. Transmission complete. Daniel's armor went dark. The medical frame caught most of his weight as his legs failed. Caliph reached him before he struck the floor. The cost appeared on every system. Energy spent. Support lost. Damage permanent. The evidence was gone from their control. So was the illusion that any of them could pass the burden to someone else. The first public statement from Avara did not begin with an apology. Caliph made sure of that. Apologies could be offered and forgotten. Records could not. The evidence from the neutral relay reached multiple independent authorities before the palace could respond. Each group examined the data differently. Some focused on the attack itself. Others examined the security procedures that allowed the false conclusion to spread. The result was not immediate agreement. It was investigation. That was slower. It was also harder to manipulate. The council hearings continued for weeks. Valor remained present throughout them. He did not deny the decisions he had made. He defended them. He argued that a leader responsible for millions of lives could not ignore the possibility of chaos. He argued that caution had prevented worse outcomes in the past. Some members of the council supported him. Others did not. Caliph did not remove him through emergency authority. She allowed the same legal structure that had restricted her choices to examine his. The process was public. The criticism was public. The consequences were public. Her position survived. It did not remain unchanged. Several royal powers were transferred to independent review bodies. Security authority was divided between multiple departments. Emergency decisions that once depended on a single office now required additional oversight. The crown remained. The certainty around it did not. Daniel learned most of this from a medical room far from the center of political attention. His recovery was slower than the official announcements. The Avaran medical systems had prevented further decline. They had not reversed the damage. His left side armor interface never returned to full operation. Some neural support pathways remained permanently impaired. His field certification was suspended indefinitely. The report called it a medical limitation. Daniel called it accurate. When Caliph visited him before his departure, she did not bring a ceremony. She brought the damaged witness mesh housing. The armor section had been preserved. Not repaired. Preserved. I thought they would display it. Daniel looked at the damaged component. They requested it. And you refused. Yes. He studied the object. Why? Caliph placed it on the table between them. Because the decision it recorded mattered more than the object itself. Daniel looked at her. That was different from the first time they met. Back then, he had seen a ruler making a decision. Now he saw someone living with one. The transport platform waited outside the palace. The same palace where she had hidden him. The same place where that choice had nearly ended her authority. The room had changed since then. Security systems had been redesigned. Investigation teams moved openly. Workers repaired damaged infrastructure without pretending nothing had happened. The palace no longer looked untouched. That was the point. Before Daniel left, Caliph joined him at the platform. You still think hiding me was reckless? Daniel adjusted the support brace beneath his jacket. Yes. She accepted the answer. He looked at her. But I understand why you did it. Another answer. Not forgiveness. Not agreement. Something earned. Caliph looked toward the transport corridor. You saved lives before anyone knew your name. Daniel glanced back. I was doing my job. Yes. She did not turn it into something larger. She let the action remain what it was. The transport doors opened. Avara had not become peaceful overnight. Humanity had not become trusted overnight. The investigation had not erased fear. The damage had not disappeared. But the next decision would be made with more people watching, more people questioning, more people capable of seeing the cost before accepting the result. Daniel stepped aboard. Caliph remained on the platform as the vessel departed. The first report had called him a threat. The final record called him a witness. Neither label contained the whole person. The evidence had survived because someone chose to carry it. The future would depend on who chose to listen. Thank you for staying with this story until the end. If you were in Kalitha's place, would you protect a wounded enemy before knowing the full truth? Share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Galactic Contact for more cinematic human-alien stories.